Lucas Wargha with Beyond the Code, Building an Epic Career. Lucas Wargha is an engineer. We all are engineers. Is an engineering leader guided by the simple motto building people, building code. Born and raised in Brazil, he carries a deep appreciation for people, culture, and community. He believes software should be human-centric, focused on solving real problems and making life better. Beyond the office, Lucas is a co-host of the Utah JS Lehi meetups, where he helps grow and support the local developer community. He is passionate about helping people thrive, both in their careers and through the relationships they build along the way. Outside of work, he enjoys spending time with his wife and son, exploring new foods, playing chess, and watching soccer. So let's give a big round of applause for Lucas, and we'll get him started. Yeah.
That's yeah, that good?
Yeah.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am really happy to be here today. This is my first conference talk ever. And I'm especially excited to be here at Utah JS. Yes, thank you. I'm especially glad that this is happening here at Utah JS because I happen to co-host, like our awesome MC said, I co-host the Utah JS Lehi meetups. So I'm glad that my first conference talk happens to happen at the same conference of a community that I help on building. If you're not connected with me, you totally should. I'm on X, LinkedIn, and when you have a weird last name like mine, you get to buy yourlastname.com for $8. And so I started posting some stuff on my website and plan on doing more. So you can follow me there. I want to talk about a few things today that I believe can make a difference. When I was thinking about what I would speak and propose to speak on my first talk, I had this big list of technical items. A lot of them focus on some really cool AI experience that I had been doing. But the more I reflected on what I should speak, the more I wanted to talk a little bit more about the why we do what we do and why we build things instead of just the how. And so, let me start with the story. My story. Specifically the story of how I had a midlife crisis on my early 20s. I came here from Brazil to study software engineering, and I was in school, I was learning a lot. I got a bunch of internships. I was growing, tech was booming, the market was hot, and things were going pretty well. Eventually, I got married, moved to Utah, got a full-time job offer to work at this fantastic company that I worked for a number of years. And then one day, everything stopped. I was at work, and I started having some really weird medical symptoms. I went to the hospital and then to a bunch of doctors. No one could really figure out what was going on, what was wrong with me. Eventually, this one doctor ordered a specific test, a brain MRI, and found a cyst, almost the size of a golf ball in my brain, that could explain some of the symptoms that I was having. The interesting thing about this situation is that because of where the cyst was located, it's not like they could go and operate or do a biopsy and know if everything would be okay. And so the plan that the doctor came up with his team was that every 6 months they would do another MRI and see how this would progress. And this was especially tricky because I didn't know if everything would be okay or not. I didn't know if I had something life-threatening unfolding or something very disabling, or if everything would turn out to be okay. So I couldn't just quit my job and go travel the world because everything maybe would be okay, and everything did turn out to be okay. But that experience changed my life and it made me very early on in my career consider something that I hadn't really considered before. And the question that I started considering was like, if I'm no longer here soon or whenever, what would I leave behind? And so I kind of went on this journey. At the time, I was mostly chasing a paycheck and a higher paycheck and a career that looked really good on my resume on LinkedIn, but it really didn't mean anything to me or to anyone else. That same year, I went to this Christmas activity for the company I was working for at the time. And like they do sometimes in Christmas conference, they give you a book for you to read. I generally don't read those, but I read this book. This book is about this guy, Donald Miller, and it's titled A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. And the story of this book, for those who haven't read it, is that he's this super famous marketing guru, super expert on marketing stuff, speaks everywhere in the world. And some movie producers came to him and they wanted to film a video of his life. So they got together and started forming the plot for the movie. And as they did that, Miller realized that his life was actually quite boring and not worth making a movie out of it. And so they end up pausing filming the movie, and he goes into changing his life, and the video is about him changing his life and creating a life worth remembering and creating a story worth telling. That message came to me at the right time and made me think a lot about it. And I decided at that moment, if I was going to spend about a third of my life or whatever else I had left at that point, I wanted to be something that would make a difference. I want to be something epic, something really extraordinary. I didn't want just to let time go by. And so I came up with a framework. Framework usually are ways that we use lots of frameworks in programming, but frameworks help people achieve specific objectives and creates kind of a system and a process for them to do so. It usually is embedded by values and a philosophy behind it. And so in programming, we use React, for example, and frameworks will help us in code to write code faster with more quality and more robustness generally. And so I created my own framework. And it wasn't a technical framework, but rather a life and career framework. And so this framework became a tool that I used a lot since then. I still use today. And I believe that anyone following the principles that I'm going to go over this framework will have a pretty epic career. And so this is the framework. It's comprised by 3 parts. And the center of everything is people, because I believe software should be more about people and less about code. And then we have the impact and the ownership that you have on things that you do. And I'm going to talk over the next few minutes, I'm going to be talking about each of these and hoping to make a difference there. As engineers, we focus a lot on what is in our resume. We're always trying to learn a new language, a new framework, or getting a new certification. And these are all good things. I think we should all seek out those things. But sometimes we focus too much on it. This framework, however, it aims to answer a different question. And this question is, what is not on your resume? See, I think that the most valuable qualities that I see in engineers and people in general, they are generally not on their resume and can't be on the resume. And so something that I started asking for every engineer that I hire at some point in the interview process, I'll go and ask them, so what is not in your resume? And give them a chance to shine. And so let's talk about some of the things that may not be on your resume, but you're already looking for, or some things that I think are worth pursuing. The first pillar for an epic career is people. And it is the pillar number 1 and the one in the middle for a reason. The ultimate impact that we will all have in our careers have a lot more to do with people than it has to do with code. My motto, especially since that experience and as I became an engineering manager and I had to deal a lot with people, was build people, build code. And I think the order matters. Strong teams, they build strong software, but they also build each other in the process. And if they're not doing that, I think we're not a whole lot different than AI. We criticize AI because it removes the human out of it, but sometimes we do the same with our careers and with our daily tasks. I asked ChatGPT to come up with an image, knowing what it knows about me, of me retiring 30, 40, or 50 years whenever I do retire. And it came up with this, and I thought it was a pretty cool image generation. And I love coding, don't get me wrong, but the more I thought about this image, I thought this was actually kind of sad and depressing. Because ultimately, the impact that I want to leave in my career should have a lot more to do with the people that I'm helping than just the code that I'm writing. And I believe that the ultimate impact that we will all have in our careers, in fact, I guess what I'm trying to say is when we do retire for some 10, for some 30, for some 50 years, I think you were going to remember very little which front-end framework you're using in 2025 or which new AI model that helped you ship that shiny feature to your company last quarter. What you remember, though, are the people that you built, the people that helped you progress, and how your software, your craft, impacted other people's lives. And when I think about people, I cannot not think about community. a lot of times people, when they think about community, they think about the people you work with, maybe the people that use your software, but especially after COVID, I started realizing more and more how much we need community. And when I think about community, I think about all of these different meetups, even this conference. I think about all the different nonprofits that desperately need our talent and support to go build things for them. And I think just about our community in general. During COVID, I was opening at this company, RedX, and Mark, he's the CEO of RedX, for multiple months, especially during the beginning of COVID where everyone was scared, no one knew what was actually going to happen. He would record a video every single day and to kind of provide some support to people. And at the end of the video, of every single video, he would say the following: tough times never last, tough people always do. And I think people, in plural, is intentional, because tough people, groups of people who stay together and build each other, they can go through tough times. I think we're going through a tough time right now. I go to Utah JS and I see everything going on. I see that it might be a long period of tough time, but I believe that as a community, as long as we stay together, we can do great things. The second pillar for an epic career is impact. All three pillars are very interconnected, but I think impact is a really important one that helps us measure what we're doing in our career. Ultimately, you want to leave a great impact in your career. Engineers that focus on impact will focus more on outcome than output. As engineers, we tend to focus too much on how complex something is or how difficult it is, and not focus enough on the value that will actually create the outcome. In fact, even different project planning models will ask us to specifically measure our success and velocity and how many days it took to do something. And I think there's validity. These are all good measurements. But if we're only focused on our output and not enough on the outcome, I think we'll leave a lot behind. Engineers, in fact, all the engineers that I know, they're the 10x, 100x engineers. It's not that they can code 10 or 100 times faster, but it's because they can actually think through the impact and the outcome that their code that they're writing will generate. And when we focus on output instead of outcome, we start getting lost on the thick of thin things. We focus a lot on just some technical complexity. We get lost on the weeds of those things and forget about what really matters. And companies that are generally successful are companies that are full of engineers that can focus on the right things at the right time with the right level of craft. I cannot tell you how many times that I started working on a project or went to meetings and then meetings about meetings or finished a project that either never ended up seeing the light of day or never really made a difference to anyone because I wasn't thinking about the outcome at first, and I was too focused on doing something that someone asked me to do. When I think about impact, I think about culture, because for me, the most brilliant engineers that I've ever met, some of them are here in the room today, their code contributions are great. They can write code all day long, but their greatest contribution is actually on the culture. The funny thing about culture is that when you have people that shape cultures and teams, you end up shaping the culture of your team. You end up shaping the future of your team, and therefore shaping the future of your organization and company, and therefore changing just the future. And I think that the best way I use to measure my own impact in my career is to measure how did I improve significantly the culture of the teams that I became a part of. I've been lucky to be part of multiple teams over my career, and it's a really cool thing. And it's hard to measure, and I came up with my own metrics I won't be sharing here today. But I think this is the kind of impact that lasts. The last pillar is ownership. And I think this pillar is the last, but it brings all of the other ones together. Like I said, they're all very interconnected. It's also one of the hardest ones to teach or incorporate, and really hard to evaluate. In fact, when I go and hire engineers, it's easy to see if they know React. But the reality is I can teach someone React, I can teach someone TypeScript or the new library that we're using in our team. But I can't just teach someone to be an owner and to have ownership. And therefore, for me, one of the most valuable characteristics of someone who's building a career that will last. This sentence, someone ought to do something about it. When I think about ownership, I think about this sentence. I've heard it multiple times, I've said it multiple times, and I see it everywhere. Someone really should do something about this stuff. Or how nice would it be if someone just thought about this? And my question to you today, as you think about ownership in your product or even outside of your teams, is what if you were that someone? And I think a lot of times as engineers, we tend to wait for a task or wait for permission. And the most impact that I've ever felt that I was having was when I just wouldn't wait. I would just go and do things. In fact, I think that we can just do things. And when I think about ownership, I think a lot about this concept of creators and consumers. I personally believe that there's two types of people in this world, creators and consumers, and I do think that we play both roles at different times and at different capacities, but I think that the ultimate fulfillment of anyone's careers has a lot to do with the ratio through which you create more than you consume. There are people in companies and in society that are there just to consume, and there are people there, and there are others that are there to create. Be the creator. For me, specifically with software, it's exhilarating to write code and just create impact at scale and help people on your team, but also millions of people out there. But for that, we have to have that creator mentality. If we're just waiting for a task, that might not happen. The ultimate thing about ownership is the concept of the product engineer. For too long, I've seen engineers just delegating every single aspect of their creative and creation process to just someone with a product on their title. So maybe a product manager, a product stakeholder. But the engineers that I see that are the most successful are the ones that are actually product engineers. Because the truth is, whether you're a technical or non-technical person, on how technical you are, ultimately you're just building a product. And so we're all product engineers in one way or another. And I think we're coming to a point, I don't know if it will take a year, 5 years, or 10 years. And I heard that from another conference, and it was a quote that said something around those lines. In the future, your ability to code will be the least interesting thing about you. And I think one of the most interesting things about engineers would be their ability to just create awesome products and solve complex problems. There might come a time where maybe the world needs less software engineers. I don't think that will happen, but maybe it will. But I don't ever think there will be a time where the world needs less product engineers. So it feels wrong to, in 2025, go to a conference and not talk about AI. So I felt like I should talk about AI, so I'm going to talk about AI now. Yeah. I think AI is here, and it's here to stay. I remember on the early days of ChatGPT, I would see those demos that they would send us. I could see those demos on YouTube, and it would just come up with all that weird spaghetti bad code. And I was like, this is crap. This is never going to replace me. This is never going to really make a difference. But then it got better, and then it got a lot better. And now we're here. But what I want to tell you about this is we've been there before. This is not new. Back in the day, there was an industrial revolution that machines replaced manual labor. And then there was the automobile revolutions where cars replaced horses, and many people were just not having it. I'm never going to get in this thing. And then there was a bunch of software revolutions. C and C++ ruled the world for a long time, and then Java came along, and there was no pointers. And people thought that was a heresy. How can you have a programming language without pointers? Well, and then the web came along, and I remember my first week of school, I overheard some engineers that worked for the school as engineers saying, real engineers don't use JavaScript. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, and there were solutions for like low code and then no code solutions. Now we have all the crazy things that we can do with AI. But I guess what I'm trying to say ultimately about AI, which follows the same principles of everything that I just talked about before, there's always going to be a place for people trying to solve complex problems and make a difference in the world. Other than that, you're ahead. You're ahead in 90, I saw a statistic where any software engineer that has ever used AI, you're already ahead of something 99.2% of the world, which is crazy. So we are ahead, and hopefully we can stay ahead. As I close, I want to share one belief that drives me. I believe 100% in creating a culture for myself and for the teams that I work with of high hopes and high expectations. I think it's a positive thing to have high hopes and high expectations. But as we think about shaping a career and do something meaningful, we can sometimes feel like an imposter. And I think that's okay. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to feel that way. Because oftentimes we feel like imposters when we're about to do something really great. And yeah, I really hope that what I shared today helps you think about where you are, where you want to be, and be very intentional about where you want to get in your career and the kind of legacy you want to leave behind one day, whenever that is. My invitation to you comes in a couple parts. The first one is build people. The second one is create extreme impact in whatever that you do, or everything that you do. Become a true owner. And above all, I believe that by doing so, you will create an epic, memorable, and even extraordinary career and life. In summary, my invitation is for you to create a better story. Thank you.